Chapter 3.2, Day 2, Complex Numbers. To multiply two complex numbers, use the distributive property or the FOIL method, just as you do when multiplying real numbers or algebraic expressions. Remember to simplify I squared to -1. So we did that before, that I squared equals -1. So remember to put that I squared as -1. Example number 5, multiplying complex numbers. Write the answer in standard form. Remember the standard form was a plus bi. Letter A, you're going to multiply 4i with this -6 plus I. So it's distribution. So you're going to distribute 4i inside. So you're going to get here is 4i times -6 is -24i plus 4i squared. So now you're going to keep the -24i plus 4 times -1. Remember we have I squared as -1. So answer, we're going to rewrite it into this form. So the real part first, so -4 first, and then you're going to write the imaginary part. So you're going to rewrite this as -4 plus 24i. For letter B, we are going to multiply the two binomial factors. So we're going to multiply it by using FOIL. So we're going to multiply 9 times -4 and 9 times 7. And on the top here, -2i times -4 and -2i times 7. So let's simplify that. You're going to get here is -36. 9 times 7 would be plus 63i. Next is you're going to have -2i times -4, that is positive 8i, minus 2i times 7 is 14i squared. Now you combine the like terms, so these are going to be combined. So it's going to be -36 plus 71i and -14 times -1. You're going to get here is -36 plus 71i plus 14. So the final answer is going to be -22 plus 71i. The next one is number 11, where you're going to simply multiply the -3i times 10i. That is going to be -30i square, where you're going to plug I square as -1. So -30 times -1, that's going to be 30. So the answer is 30. For number 12, you're going to distribute the I inside. So you're going to get 8i minus I square. So you're going to get here is 8i minus -1. So the answer is 8i plus 1. Rewrite it into standard form, which means the real part first and then the imaginary part. So 1 plus 8i is your answer. For number 13, you're going to multiply two binomial by either the box method or by the FOIL method. For box method, you're going to make a box and multiply through the box method. The top factor 3 plus I goes here and 5 minus I goes here. Now you're going to multiply these two. You get here is 15. 5 times I is 5i. -I times 3 is -3i. And -I times I would be -I square. Now these are the two like terms that you can combine. We are going to rewrite this 15 plus 5i minus 3i, which is 2i, minus I square. So you're going to get 15 plus 2i minus -1. So 15 plus 2i plus 1. So combining 15 and 1, that's going to be 16 plus 2i, and that's your final answer. The second method you can use to solve this problem is FOIL method, where you can FOIL 3 times 5 is 15, 3 times negative I is negative 3i, I times 5 is 5i, I times negative I is negative I squared. So you combine the like terms. Here you get 15 plus 2i, and here you get negative times negative is positive 1. Combine the like terms. 15 plus 1 is 16 plus 2i. So same answer. You can choose any method of your choice. Complex solutions and zeros. Solve x squared plus 4 equals 0. To solve this, we're going to isolate the x squared term. So we're going to subtract 4 on both sides. You get x squared equals negative 4. Now to do the opposite operation, you're going to square root on both sides. Square and square root cancel each other, so it means that this is going to be x. And for negative 1, you're going to either write it negative 1 times 4, so square root of negative 1 times square root of 4. This is going to be plus or minus. Square root of 4 is 2, and square root of negative 1 is I. So plus or minus 2i. For letter B, you're going to isolate the 2x squared term. So you're going to add 11 on both sides. So you're going to get 2x squared equals negative 36. Divide with 2 on both sides. X squared equals negative 18. Now you're going to square root on both sides. You get plus or minus square root of negative 18. Now we're going to break this 18 down. So it's going to be negative 1, square root of negative 1 times square root of 9 times 2. So square root of 9 is 3, so it's going to be plus or minus 3 times I, so it's going to be 3i square root of 2. On the other side, square root and square cancel, so x equals plus or minus 3i square root 2. For you try problem number 14, you're going to take a square root on both sides. So whenever you take square root, you always put plus or minus. Square and square root cancel. X equals plus or minus I square root 13. Remember to put I for negative, and 13 is just a number. We cannot even break this down, or this does not have a perfect square. So for number 15, you're going to take a square root on both sides. Now you want to break this 38 down to two numbers. One of them should be perfect square and one of them it's not. So if I try and break this down, I have two numbers 19 and 2. None of them has a perfect square. It means we cannot break this down. So we can only do square and square root cancel on this side. So x equals plus or minus I square root 38, because we cannot break 38 down, so that's your answer. For number 16, you're going to subtract 11 on both sides. X squared equals negative 8. Take a square root on both sides. So always when you take square root on both sides, when x is involved, write down the plus or minus sign. So x equals plus or minus 4 times 2. Now we have a square root of 4, which is 2 outside, and inside you're left with 2. So there is a negative sign, so remember to put I outside. Number 17, you're adding 8 on both sides. You get here x squared equals negative 28. Now you're going to take a square root on both sides and write a plus or minus sign in front. Square and square root cancel. You got x equals plus or minus negative 1 times 4 times 7. For negative 1, you write I outside, and for 4, you're going to get the square root of 4, that's 2. Since 7 does not have a square root, so it stays inside. For number 18, you add 7 on both sides, you get 3x squared equals negative 24. Divide 3 on both sides, you get x squared equals negative 8. Take a square root on both sides, you get x equals plus or minus negative 1 times 4 times 2. For negative 1, you write I outside. For 4, you write 2. And inside, you left with square root 2. For number 19, subtract 33 on both sides. You get 5x squared equals negative 30. Divide with 5 on both sides. You get x squared equals negative 6. And then you're going to take a square root on both sides. So square and square root cancel. You got x equals plus or minus I square root 6. For example number 7, you're going to find the x value. It means the same thing as finding the zeros of equation. So we're going to find the zeros or x values of fx equals 4x squared plus 20. Now to find the 0, we need to plug it in 0 for fx. So it's going to be 0 equals 4x squared plus 20. Now we're going to find out the x squared. So we're going to isolate x squared term by subtracting 20 on both sides. So you get negative 20 equals 4x squared. Divide with 4 on both sides. So you got x squared equals negative 5. To solve this completely for x, you're going to square root on both sides. So x squared square root equals plus or minus square root of negative 5. Square and square root cancel, so x equals plus or minus I square root 5. Example number 7, we are going to check the solution by plugging it in the x value for x here and see if the two sides are equal. So here is the x value that we're going to use to plug it in here. So let's do that. 0 equals 4 times plus or minus I square root 5 squared. So I'm using the x value, which is this one. So what we get here is 4 times I squared square root of 5 squared. Now we don't have to use a negative and positive sign. Whenever we square any term, it's going to be positive anyway. So we don't have to write the plus or minus because it's going to be positive. Now for I square, we're going to use negative, and square root of 5 square is going to be 5. So it's going to be 4 times negative 5, that's negative 20, plus 20, which is equals to 0, and that is true because the both sides are came out equal to each other. It means this is going to be a solution of this function. Now we're going to do the you try problem. So you're going to pause the video, try 20, 21, 22, and then we'll go over together. For number 20, when you put fx equals 0, then you can find the zeros of this equation. So negative 7 on both sides, x squared equals negative 7. Take square root on both sides, you're going to get x equals plus or minus I square root 7. When you put 0 here, you're going to get the equation 0 equals negative x squared minus 4. Add 4 on both sides, you get x squared, negative x squared equals 4. Divide with negative 1, you get x squared equals negative 4. Take a square root on both sides, you're going to get x equals plus or minus 2i. Square root of 4 is 2 and square root of negative 1 is I outside. 9x squared plus 1 equals 0. Negative 1 on both sides and divide with 9. You get x squared equals negative 1 over 9. Take a square root on both sides. The square root and square cancel. So x equals plus or minus 1 over 3. And for negative, you put I outside.